You're live on News at Prime. Thanks for staying with us tonight. Let's take you back to our top story now. The DA going back to the drawing board after it'll now have to search for a suitable candidate to replace the outgoing Mayor Herman Mashaba in Johannesburg. He, of course, resigned from the party this morning.
It is not in my nature to wait for people to push me. I have lived my life on my terms. It is for this reason that I've called this press conference today to announce my resignation from the DA Democratic Alliance effective 27th November 2019. It is on the request of the party leadership that my resignation is held off until this date to afford them the opportunity to identify a new candidate to fill this position. By so doing, I will no longer serve as a Democratic Alliance councillor, and therefore I'm required to resign as Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, effective on the same date. I've given this decision considerable thought, and I've been tortured by the circumstances that I've had to lead me to this moment. It is not in my nature to quit anything in life. I succeeded under the darkest days of our country's history when I was told that I could not be a businessman. However, I cannot be a willing participant in good conscience in a process that is placing the narrow internal interest of a political party ahead of the needs of the 5 million residents of our city, of the city of Johannesburg.
Well, let's discuss the weekend's events and, of course, today's resignation by Herman Mashaba. We're joined by Douglas Gibson. He's a former chief whip of the party and also former FedEx chair. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Such a pleasure to be with you and your viewers.
Sure. I wonder, in the history of the Democratic Alliance, the number of times, and you've been with the organization for many years, the number of times that there has been a resignation by somebody who is in the position of mayorship simply because of principle which he says if he stays with the DA, he simply would not be helping build a democratic South Africa.
Political parties go through ups and downs, and in the last 40 or 50 years of my participation, there have been many of both.
When you talk about many of both, perhaps give us another similar incident.
Well, let me say that
Sure.
I think it's very sad that Herman Mashaba is resigning as the mayor. I like him personally. He's a great chap, and he's been the best mayor that Johannesburg has had since democracy. He's led a very successful DA-led coalition government in the city, and I think it's given a really good standard of government to Johannesburg. I'm hoping that with his stepping down, the party will be able to come forward with an acceptable candidate and put together another DA-led coalition to finish the work that Herman and his team started.
How seriously do you think the reasons he's given for the resignation will be taken, especially by those who remain within the DA, especially within the Federal Council?
Look, Herman's entitled to his own views, and he's entitled to do. He's a free citizen in a free country under a democratic constitution. I believe, however, that if one belongs to a political party and you're a Democrat, then you abide by the democratic decisions of the party. Whether one wanted Helen Zille to be the chairperson of the Federal Council or not, the fact is she was elected, and she's now entitled to receive the support and the understanding of all of the people within the party. And if Herman couldn't do that, I think it's really a big sign on his part that he's a man of principle and he was prepared to go.
You say that, he's entitled to his own view. Do you agree with what he's saying about the party, or do you think that he's not completely spot on?
I don't think he's completely spot on. You know, I believe that people in South African politics make the mistake of falling into the racial trap too easily. We're only a generation away from the beginning of democracy, and race seems to permeate every single thing in South Africa, from the government right down to the bottom, every company, every school, and we all wrestle with transformation. But one of the things that I don't like is that we start giving labels to things. Like, one of the labels is a classical liberal, or a progressive, or a democratic socialist, or whatever. Really what I would like to see the party do is to clarify exactly what it wants for South Africa, the offer that it wants to offer to our people, so that it's absolutely clear to those voters what is on offer. And I think it will start getting increased support again.
Are these labels not labels that are particularly coming out of the party itself? Because in conversation, and especially when you raise something like falling too easily into the racial trap, and how policies don't need to be race-based, they need to be merit-based and address perhaps the root of the problem, not necessarily emphasizing race. It's in those very same conversations that members of the DA will remind us that, well, we're a liberal organization. And the debate this weekend seems to be about who are the progressive liberals and who are the non-progressive liberals.
You know, any political party that's bigger than a cocktail party has different groups and different interests. The Democratic Alliance is the most diverse political party in South Africa. And what it does is it seeks to represent the whole spectrum in the country: color, culture, language, gender, you name it, to reflect all of those things. And there are competing interests which inevitably arise. But I think if you went down to the essence of what each of those competing interests want, you find they're not really very far apart. I would like to see a unifying force that would establish exactly what it is that they want for the country, and then to formulate the policies that will achieve that.
Can you sincerely say that the conversation should not really be about race when we look at how the numbers, especially the election numbers of the Democratic Alliance, have been analyzed, have been also along racial lines, and the direction that the party needs to take is also seemingly in a direction which appeals to a certain constituency, which some feel the party has lost over the years. It's also very clear that the party is just not progressing with a black vote as much as it had anticipated, especially with a black leader.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, of course, that there are suggestions that support has been lost in two directions, among white South Africans and among black South Africans. That is an indication of the very diversity of the party. The party may not be as diverse as one would like it to be, but the fact is that the DA certainly takes it seriously. If you go to any council, to any province, into Parliament itself, you go there and you look at the ANC side and you look at the DA side and see which one has made the effort to try to reflect South Africa as it is. The DA might have a lot of white people, but there's nothing wrong with being white. I'm white and I'm quite happy about it. But in terms of the Constitution, we're all equal.
What about the perception that the party is more concerned about white voters and losing, in particular, a certain group of the white base than it is about the black voters?
No, well, I think the party would be foolish if it did that. The white voters are now 8% of South Africa, of the South African electorate, and that percentage is dropping with immigration, with aging population, small white population growth. Whereas the black section of the population on the voters' roll is going up dramatically with all the young people coming on. So any political party that wants to focus on one small section of the population is doomed to fail.
Is Helen Zille a unifier?
Well, she was a very successful leader of the party for many years. She was also arguably the best premier that any of the provinces have had in South Africa in a generation. So the answer is yes. She was also the mayor of Cape Town. She managed a very difficult coalition there. So she certainly can be a unifier, provided that she shows that it's possible for her not to be the boss. It's very difficult for somebody who's been the leader of a party to suddenly be something less than that.
it's a tension you speak about. It's a tension you speak about, you know, number one, having the restraint to allow the party leader to do his work.
Yes.
But we also know that she'll exercise quite a bit of authority. I know you say we mustn't exaggerate the position of FedEx chair. It remains an important position, nonetheless. So do you think that it's something that she'd be capable of doing? And what will be the greatest challenge then between her and Mmusi Maimane? Because they seem to be also on different ends when it comes to ideology.
Look, they have both said that they're happy and prepared to work with each other. Helen said she'll stay in her own lane, and she respects the leader and the leadership of the party, and Mmusi said he's prepared to work with her.
Isn't that part of politics?
Well, you're not suggesting that they would tell fibs, are we? They're both reasonable adults, and they've got the interest of South Africa at heart, and I believe that they will be able to work together.
Does the tension have a way of finding resolve, especially because it's been reported that the two haven't necessarily been on good terms in the last couple of years? So with that knowledge, and also Helen Zille being seen as a pure liberal, as it were, and Mmusi Maimane on this progressive liberal slate, as it were, what does that do for how policy then will find expression within the DA going into a local government election, when, of course, these municipalities are going to be all important? And we know that from the by-election results, the party is nervous about the upcoming election.
Well, any party that isn't nervous about the next election is doomed to go down. You might find that the ANC, which lost a huge amount of support in the general election and did it lose 17 or 19 seats, lost far more than the DA lost. But I haven't heard anybody suggesting that President Ramaphosa must accept responsibility and stand down.
So do you think that the recommendations for Mmusi Maimane to step down should not be exercised?
Well, it's a decision that a Congress will take. He's elected not by a small meeting. He's elected by a Congress, and I was present at the last one and the one before. There were thousands of people there, and he was elected. So I don't see him standing down now very easily. And let's see if there's somebody who's prepared to challenge him. It's a democratic vote in a democratic alliance. And I remain optimistic about the DA, just as I remain optimistic about South Africa. If South Africa is going to work properly as a constitutional democracy, the government must know what it's doing, and it's got to be faced by an opposition that's big enough to challenge the government at every level.
Some of the damage that the DA has incurred over the years has somewhat been self-inflicted because it has come out of how the parties, you know, interacting with some of its members, whether we draw on the Patricia de Lille example, and there are a few others.
Yes.
When it comes to fractions in the party, how deep do those divisions lie as we speak?
Well, it remains to be seen how many people, for example, follow Herman out of the party. If it's very small, that will already give you an answer. I honestly believe that most people within the party organisation, most of the members, want the party to succeed, and they're going to do whatever is necessary to do that. I mean, I tweeted the other day, and I was very pleased to see Athol Trollip also do a tweet saying Helen deserves the support of the people of the party, and he congratulated her. And that's the democratic and gentlemanly spirit that people in the party should conduct themselves.
All right.
And if they do that, I think they'll get over the current problems.
All right, let's leave there for tonight. Douglas Gibson, he is the former chief whip of the Democratic Alliance. After the break, we're in conversation with the Automobile Association over that R2 legislation and the tax that you now may have to incur. Leighton Beard is standing by.
With a great deal of interest in future.
Thank you.